Yes, hi, I'm Maggie Malloy. I was an employee first of Child Development Centers and then of Child Parent Centers. I was a teacher for a year, education director for about a year, and then for 40 years I was the executive director of Child Parent Centers. I do remember when I was interviewed as a potential teacher for Head Start, and it was Child Development Centers, the original delegate agency of the Committee for Economic Opportunity, which was called CEO. So I went to work as a teacher, and I think my hourly rate was $2.10 an hour. It was, I mean, we're talking little itty bitty amounts of money. And I worked with Teresa Acevedo, was my co-teacher, and at that time there were no performance standards for Head Start. There was a book, one book, that was it. And there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of political maneuvering. Head Start was good money. The schools were part of Head Start as delegate agencies. Child Development Centers is a nonprofit. At that time, no degrees were required. It was competency-based, and if you were willing to do the work, then you were probably going to get a shot at it. So because I had a degree, I became first the education director, so I taught 2 years. I knew from nothing, really, other than I had a great time with children. One of the things Head Start was very strong on from the very beginning is that parents were powerful because they were parents. And so the public schools then withdrew from providing Head Start services. That money came back to CEO, and with Ron's leadership and CEO's leadership, they decided to delegate all of Head Start in the 5 counties to Child Development Centers, and Child Development Centers became Child Parent Centers at that time. And that we had to scrape and scratch for everything we got. So we were in churches because churches would let us in, and if we paid the utility bill, they wouldn't charge us any rent. And so we were in very humble, very, very humble locations. When CEO then had difficulties in meeting standards and things like that, they went under. And then the question was, well, what will happen to Head Start? Because there had to be a grantee and we were a delegate agency. So the big decision to be made was, would we apply just to become the grantee for Head Start in Tucson, Pima County? You had to do a county. Or would we do the 5 counties? And we said, oh, it's got to be the 5 counties. Here we are, so tired we can hardly talk, but it's got to be the 5 counties. There's just no other way around it. They cannot break up the 5 counties. And so, of course, we were successful in doing that. This always makes me cry, which is no different than I've always been, right? So the most important thing about that was that we needed to be equally good everywhere. That has always mattered. And I think when you look at what's part of the glue that holds us together, a big deal was, of course, adding home base. Really added to the heart of Head Start because it brought parents in such a powerful way. It also, I think, created the foundation for early Head Start in terms of the relationship with the parent. That those were enormously important things. And we had a very strong priority of trying to move everything along, and also for us to get out of churches into permanent facilities. So we made the decision to partner with public schools, not to be inside the school, because then you could be moved, but to have facilities on school campuses so you could collaborate with the school but not be vulnerable to being moved. And that, I think, has turned out to be a good strategy. Head Start, when it was reauthorized by Congress, Congress looked at the education levels of Head Start and started to put in education requirements. The CDA credential for teachers was huge, huge deal. And then along came AA degrees, bachelor degrees. So Head Start has professionalized. So one of the huge changes is it used to be if you came in as a parent with interest and a willingness to work hard and to learn, you could do any job. Now you also need to add the education, and then you can do any job. Always an adventure. I know in the questions you asked, what were some funny things that happened? I can't think of anything funny that happened. I can think of lots of times we laughed, but it wasn't because it was funny. It was because what else? You're going to cry. If you don't, I mean, it'd be time for school to start and a church would kick us out. Well, that's the first time we had morning and afternoon sessions because we had nowhere for the children to go. So you had a morning session, and then you had the center that got kicked out was always the afternoon center. And so those children were brought in the vans and came to school in the afternoon. And then that became our morning afternoon program. The thing that would be different about us and lots of other Head Start programs, we always used a different teaching team in the morning and in the afternoon because we wanted the children the best. And that was how we knew to get the best, is you needed people who were fresh for the children. So that's all there were. There weren't that many in the counties. And so it wasn't until after we became the grantee and they started funding Head Start to grow that we added the others. The practice was always add some rural, add some urban. Even though the urban is big enough that you could neglect the counties, we never chose to do that. It's always important. Yeah. Expansion was, let's see, 77.
Okay.
And that's about the time when we started adding home base.
Okay.
So what would happen is about once every 2 years, there'd be an expansion proposal, and you could write for it or not. You didn't have to, but if your demographic data said you had the need and you chose to write for it, they would decide whether or not they would fund you. So our practice was we always wrote for it. Then we were successful in being the single grantee in the 5 counties. Yeah, and that was important to us. I don't care how hard it was, I'd sooner do it myself. was our attitude, and we all believed it. We all did it,
Right.
because we wanted the quality that we had learned, that we had created, and we knew there were issues with Head Start quality and some other grantees. Yeah, Head Start always, you can't be good and not work really hard. That's just how it is. It's really important. And you need to have something important to do if you're going to work that hard. And Head Start was really, really important. So it all made itself work because of the value of children, the support of parents, and that we all like to be part of something important. And that's what we are in Head Start. We're important, yeah. What I'm grateful for, because Head Start was my career, my life, for a long, long time. And I loved it because I got to work with wonderful people, with a diversity of staff that I never would have if I had been just a preschool teacher in a middle class environment. I never would have had the opportunity to work with Mrs. Dixon and Josie Johnson and Adriana Gomez and Teresa Acevedo and all the people who were like me in their values and very, very different from me in their culture. And we got to collaborate, we got to appreciate each other's strengths and weaknesses, we got to grow each other. It's wonderful. It's part of the magic, really is.